Okay, I'm sorry. I had the recording thing because I had some friends say that they really wanted recording, and Bob, we
Okay,
had
nobody
Bob's
say
permission.
anything really rude because we're being recorded.
That's right. Don't say anything you're going to regret later.
So I know you all want to play, so that's what we're going to do. And but don't hesitate to interrupt and ask questions. So for those of you that don't know me, I studied with Bill Adam in the early '80s, and um, you know, kind of changed my life, as you many of you have heard that know Mr. Adam. And there's some other players out here, Larry Hall and Charlie Davis and Jerry Hay, and feel very fortunate that I got to work with all those guys and learn so much from them as well. It's playing trumpet's kind of a lifelong lesson, and it never ends. You just keep after it. We're all students of it, so don't hesitate to ask questions. I came to LA when I left IU. I went on. Well, before I left, I went out with Buddy Rich's band for a while, and then I came back and I went to New York, and then I moved. My wife and I moved to Las Vegas. I worked there for a long time, and then I moved to LA. I started coming over after the second show many times. After the second show in Las Vegas, I'd come into LA and play recording sessions and then drive back and play another show that night. And maybe sometimes that would happen 2 or 3 times a week. And I got my way into LA playing that way. And then a writer's strike hit. And there was no work for about 18 or 20 weeks. So with a little daughter and a limited bank account, I had to find work. So I took a job at a little college and was going to stay there for a year and almost left. And after the playing picked up again, and then the president gave me some great opportunities. And so I consequently stayed teaching for many years, and we built a program there, and also played simultaneously and did a lot of great things and had tremendous opportunities to play. And but I credit it all to what I learned from Bill Adam and also my colleagues that I went to school with, and my great friend Charlie Davis, who I got to work with so many times. You know, like I said, it's a learning lesson every day for playing trumpet. So I have my students, and I do this too. I do the long tones and the Adam routine usually, and then alternating days I'll do the flow studies. The reason I do that is because the long tones shouldn't be a static thing. They should always be, every time you play a long tone, you should have a thought of it going to a melody or going somewhere. So I think Rob posted up, or you might have flow studies. I'm going to start with that today, and then we can just play along. Again, don't hesitate to ask a question. And there it is. Here we go. I'll just lead off, and you can follow me. Hey, Rob, why don't you unmute your sound or whoever you want in rotation so I can hear guys a little bit, okay?
Yeah, well, so if I do that, Jim asked the same thing. If I do that, then everybody will hear me playing when they're supposed to be playing. So they'll have to like mute. It,
Oh,
does
I
that make
see.
sense? Like I'll come through everybody's speaker when they're trying to play.
Well, that may not be a bad thing.
Okay. All
You,
right.
you, you
Well,
sound pretty darn good. All right. Or just turn your level down a little bit.
okay, I'll turn my level down. That's cool.
So if you notice, I kind of start with a little fermata and accelerate the breath or crescendo slightly, and once I do that, I don't let up. And I do these pretty slow in the morning, like we're stretching out, okay? So one other thing, here's an idea. When I get halfway through, you start breathing, each one of you, really slowly. Because all the energy in our tank is the breath. That's the gas for the carburetor, which we call our chops. So when the air's flowing steadily and there's plenty of it, that's what sets everything in motion and begins to develop. So take a full breath all the way in, like through your belly button, low and slow, and at the top of your breath, release. All right? Yeah, I'm kind of watching the screen to see when everybody quits so I don't jump on top of you. Sorry if I did that. So these can become kind of windy because I really stretch them out, but I think this is kind of analogous to being like a gymnast in the morning. Like I was saying to Rob earlier, I tell my students, what do you think it takes to become a world-class gymnast at an Olympic level? Every morning in the gym, repetition on fundamentals and what we do, and lots of stretching. This is our kind of stretch. The breath is everything. Hearing the sound And moving the breath through the sound is everything that we deal with playing trumpet. So if we can stretch that out a bit in the morning, it's going to help us a lot. Don't choke yourself off. If you need to speed it up a little bit, that's okay. But work towards a nice, even, steady thing with a big breath. The other thing I say to my students, always take a breath, no matter where you're at on the trumpet, no matter how high, how loud, how fast, like you're going to play a G in the staff. There should be no more effort on the inhalation than playing like that G in the staff. In the morning, we're not going to play too high, too loud, too fast. We're going to get that thing going and then look for that beautiful flow on that sound, okay? So now we're going to move to the last page of these, and we can extend these up as high as we're comfortable. But if you're feeling really good, having already gone up to the A, you can jump down to the G or the A and start again. But I usually take my time in the morning, and mostly with my students. Saturday morning, so all of us, I'm sure, well, it's a little earlier out here, but we're just going to take our time. So we're going to do them all on the second page. Okay, so that's about where it is on the version. You can go higher. And also, excuse me if I blow my nose. You're all dealing with COVID all over the country. We're dealing with COVID. We just had an earthquake and we have fire, so it's pretty smoky here today. So what a treat, huh? So if I
Wow.
start coughing, it's because of the smoke. It's really crazy,
Wow.
California. Okay, just a couple more to see how it's going. Don't play too loud. You want to just kind of float these out, especially in the morning. All right, and those aren't really necessary if you're if you you know,
Hey
especially if
Bob,
you're just getting started or whatever. Yeah,
Hey Bob, I have a question. I've been meaning to talk to somebody about this.
yeah.
When you're doing those and we talk about doing them like just at a moderate volume,
Hmm.
okay? Do you have any I've been working with my students and in my mind thinking about how the as we switch from like into the staff to above this staff that there's like a mindset of how we sing the sound more in like a clarino voice or like your head voice.
Mm.
You know, you know what I mean? I hear that in your playing that when we go above the staff, it keeps that clarity, and you're able to achieve that still without you're able to achieve that without going loud.
Well, one of the things that sometimes some visual imagery, even though we don't want to think of the names of the notes, and I didn't exactly lock that down. Let me try that one more time. Oh my gosh. Um, but if you can sometimes even in your mind try this visualizing every one of those exercises an octave lower, should be no more energy that. So when you're going, and maybe speed them up just a hair. So everything on the horn should be in the same place. You shouldn't fuss with your setup in the upper register or on pedal tones or anything. Everything's straight out in front of you. If you don't if you try not to play those too loud in the morning, that's a great thing. It won't help you. One of the exercises that I started doing years and years ago with Charlie was one of the stamp things, or a lot of the stamp things, but one I particularly like that I throw in my rotation is stamp number 3A, and it starts here. Uh, let me see. Let me see if I can remember it. Um, my brain is slowly waking up this morning. Oh, I'm sorry. It's this one. And it goes down into the pedal register. I don't think I gave that to Rob, but that's a really good one to just start extending your breath and getting things nice and even all the way through the horn. It goes all the way up to high D, and then we extend it a little bit further on that. But again, just trying to get it as even as you can. The other thing that I think helps your endurance and your upper register is a lot of pronunciation, a lot of tonguing. Single tonguing, double tonguing, alternating, double tonguing, and triple tonguing on alternating days. Do a fair amount of that. Some long line pronunciation, if you're all familiar with the Goldman book. Lots of long line reading, etudes and vocalises. Remember, all of this stuff we're doing in the morning is only to set us up for music later in the day, okay? Um, I don't know if that helps, Rob.
Yeah, no, it's good. Where would you like to go next?
We're just going to do a few Clarks to see. That's kind of the next thing. You all know that. So here we go. Clark 1. Now, some days, just to keep my mind alert and not doing the same thing, I'll do the chromatic triplets in Arbans in place of that, or I'll also do these as octaves. Another way you can do them is something that Bobby Burns and I have been doing a little bit, and he does this because in Earth, Wind, and Fire, he's got, I was telling Phil May the other day, this Bobby showed me what he's doing. We practice together. He'll do Clarks this way because in the Earth, Wind, and Fire book, there's a lot of articulation, as there is in a lot of pop music. So he'll just go. So, yeah, another efficient way of getting a lot of things going, doing the same thing, but having a little variance to keep your mind alert. So you're not, as I say to my students and everybody else that I talk to, the danger of doing anything in a routine or something daily is that it becomes, routine and your mind starts wandering. You're not getting the good out. Remember, everything we're doing in whatever routine, whatever variation it may be, we are trying to achieve a sound and an ease of playing and a mental relaxation that then goes into music and everything else we're playing. If you're doing 5 hours of routine every day and 45 minutes of music, something's drastically wrong. The routine and the maintenance and the growth is to train your ears and do all that stuff to get your mind to be released from the mechanics of the trumpet and the physicality into sound. And if you don't spend an inordinate amount of time working on music in every style, then it's not going to benefit you, okay? We'll continue on with the normal Clark. So while you may think that this is really a exercise in technique and speed, it's really an exercise of sound. And Mr. Adam encouraged everything we play in the routine and therefore music, even if the music doesn't crescendo, your mind is crescendoing in terms of mental energy, right? So he would start these with a slight fermata, accelerating the first note. Once that you put your foot on the gas, you don't let up. Smooth as silk through these. Okay, so yeah, and these continue on up. We can do those. Let's do the other thing we'll do sometimes is we'll do the 2-octave one, a couple different versions. We'll do a couple of those and just see how that goes. And then one other you can do if you're bored with everything else is just a couple octave one up, going up chromatically. Very simple, but effective. Another thing Mr. Adam would always say is slam those valves down. Take a big breath, don't let up. The sound shouldn't change through any of it, but really make, strike those valves pretty solid. Keep your hand nice and loose. Yeah. All right. So take a couple seconds here, and anybody has any questions, or Rob, you have any comments or questions or please let's chat about
Yeah,
it.
sure. And if anybody does have a question, but you feel kind of weird talking in front of everybody, you can go into the chat button on your screen, and then you can send it to me in writing, and then I can share that. Um, I have one question, Bob. I mean, this is because I have a lot of students that have a hard time. They're trying to get their upper register going, and it seems like the only way, I think it's sort of related to the question I asked earlier, but the only way they can kind of get the upper register to speak is by playing louder and blowing harder, right? What advice do you have for those kids? I mean, sometimes they're just kind of wanting a like a the answer, like an easy answer, but I mean, and we know that necessarily isn't always the case. What suggestions would you have for them to practice so that they can learn to not rely on blowing harder and playing louder to get the upper register to open up?
Well, of course, when we so a good quote again from Bill Adam. It's not possible to overblow the trumpet. It is possible to overblow your body, your physicality. So what happens when you try to force the upper register is tension sets in. We call that isometric tension. When that sets in, it really clamps down on your system, and you can't take a full breath. You know, if you watch Maynard or if you watch a great opera singer or watch Doc, some of the early videos, he'll take a step forward. And if you can think about playing every time you play like you're going to jump in a pool or you're going to swing a bat, that's where our energy should be. But the other thing about that is there are no quick fixes to great trumpet playing. All of this requires a tremendous amount of practice to develop and maintain. What you're doing is you're blowing you're actually strengthening the embouchure, but you're blowing the embouchure into position by the way you play. That doesn't happen with force or with some gadget or some guy sitting in his basement dreaming up some idea about improving your compression. The trumpet is a fixed entity. What you're trying to do is take from this mouthpiece to that bell. We never blow a note out of the trumpet. What we do is excite the energy within the trumpet or the molecules that reside between the mouthpiece and the bell. And as I'm seeing Bill sitting there, I know Bill did a demonstration on blowing bubbles. When you put your bell in a bucket of water and play a Clark, if you can make that water boil and not stop, then your air is moving smoothly. All of us that have taught for years have also had the students that'll blow in the pipe or blow in that water and it goes blip, 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 right? That's not an even thing. So everything I did this morning starts with accelerating the breath through the sound and beginning to grow all of that stuff. There is no quick way to fix this in the upper register. If you practice very diligently, apply yourself, stay after all these things, again, lots of music, lots of pronunciation, lots of different kinds of things that set your body into motion. The other thing is every one of us, all of us are individuals. Some things come easier for other people. Don't think that they have a trick. There may not be a trick. It's just maybe their physiology is different. They're a little bit different. I would suggest don't try to play too loud. When you're playing up, one of the things you can do is a really great exercise. You all know Schlossberg 95, probably, those of you that study Bill Adams' method. So it goes. No big deal. You're trying to get the most beautiful, opulent sound every time you play. And that's something I didn't mention. Get a great sound on every exercise you're playing. Don't just hack through this stuff because, again, what are we doing? We're setting ourselves up for music. So you have to learn to do that efficiently. Charlie and I did this thing where we would go, and each one of those partials hold as long as you can very softly. But here's the thing. As you take the breath in and you start going up, every time you take the breath, make sure it's only going to be this note in terms of the energy you're taking the breath. Every breath you take, if you take a breath like you're playing a G in the staff, the top of that breath, depending on what you're playing, it's like you snap your fingers. You swing through that sound. So. if you're trading off, your neighbor will do that. Then you do the next one and hold it much longer, as long as you can. Soft. You see, I'm playing soft. Hold it as long as you can, and then go up the partials as high as you can comfortably go, playing soft. All right? And hold it as long as you can. But don't play loud. Do not play loud. All of this presumes that you're practicing like crazy each day, that you're doing everything right, you're doing tons of pronunciation. There is no mouthpiece. By the way, this is a 3C. People always ask me that. I'll just say it right now before somebody has to ask. Okay? It's a 3C. So it's irrespective of the mouthpiece. The only reason you use a shallower mouthpiece, which I do when I play commercial stuff, is because you're trying to get a little bit more brilliance and upper partials in the sound. It does not make it easier. It makes it more appropriate sound, and maybe you don't work quite as hard, because if you are trying to get that sound and you're not using the right equipment, you might be working a little harder to get that sound. Well, if you got a 6 or 7 hour session or something, that's probably not a good plan. But there's been more than once I've walked in with the wrong mouthpiece and I played everything on a 3C. And it's not about mouthpieces or equipment. It's about how much you practice and how much your mind is engaged when you practice. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I have a question, Bob.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm pretty shameless about using my own faults and sharing
Well,
those, because I feel as though like
just,
it's easier to learn from the things that we've done wrong. So, could you have any comments on, because you're talking about like working through the upper register at a softer dynamic, and um, I remember my teachers and the Jims and Carl and John like talking about like keeping it energized and keeping it forward. And then I made the mistake of thinking that that was always in terms of energy, in terms of volume, right?
right.
So do you have any comments for people that maybe have a hard time understanding the idea of a highly energized sound, but one that's not, doesn't have to be one that's forte or fortissimo?
Yeah, so it really, again, everything I'm talking about presumes that you are um, putting it together correctly every day. And I don't mean this is going to change in a week or 2 or 6 months. It's a journey. It'll take time. But when you put it together right every day, that means that in the morning you're doing a fair amount of, or a second set, whatever, a fair amount of pronunciation. We talk about a vowel forward. Mr. Adam used to have guys sing rah through the top tip of their nose, trying to get the sound out front. The sound should be out front. It shouldn't be down in here in your chest. So if you can think forward or pick a spot on the wall and put it out there, all those are great images and all those are great things, but how we set that up each day, like we haven't been going really fast, we haven't done any pronunciation yet, but we do a lot of that each day that keeps that sound forward, and we don't want to get on it. You can't be frustrated. You might, when you play up in the upper register, you just have to take that same breath each time. That same breath, I'm not playing loud, but that'll settle down as you get later in the day, and you can lock that in. You don't need to play really loud. But it presumes that you're doing everything and you're developing the system to play that and to play those kinds of notes when you have to. The thing I hesitate to talk about upper register, because trumpet players, it's such a weightlifting contest. It's like they think if I can play a G or double C, you need to know what to do with those notes musically. Can you swing like Snooky Young playing lead? Can you? I don't care if you can play the high note at the end of the tune. Can you make... Can you do that and then turn around and go... I mean, in LA, you have to be a switch hitter. In every musical environment, you have to be a switch hitter. How do you do that? By listening. So let's talk about that. Listening to great players achieve that upper register will do more for your playing than any set of exercises. I'm not saying you don't have to do the exercises, but your ear is crucially important to what you're trying to do. Listen to great players and in every style, because you may be thinking now in college or wherever you're at that I'm going to play this kind of music. Well, a Broadway show comes in and you're playing in the orchestra. Can you play some of those cues in the Broadway show that may have to swing? Or can you play them clean because they're kind of quasi-legit? So we joke in LA that there's a lot of quasi-legit playing on film cues. It's not Mahler, it's not Beethoven, but, you know, um, you know where John Williams stole all his ideas? Holt's The Planets, right? So we joke about that stuff, but that's really what we have to do. We have to think in a musical context, and we also have to set ourselves up each day to practice the proper stuff continually to grow. I don't know if that answered it, Rob, or not, but
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of value in that, especially the listening to players do it. And I don't know about you, but it's not always. I love a lot of guys that can do some really amazingly physical things on the
yeah,
trumpet. But what I'm really interested in listening for developing the upper register through something like a flow study or through scales is listening to players that like Maurice Andre who can get into the upper register but sustain all the beauty and integrity of the tone. Because there's a
yeah,
lot of guys that can whack some high notes, but then they lose, but they don't. It doesn't sound as easy when you hear a guy like Maurice play. When he plays it, it's like you think he was sitting at a keyboard and it was just going up and down like this. It was
right,
so even and so with such
right,
ease,
right,
you know.
yeah.
I had
You
another
want to listen,
question,
let me
and
give
this
a
one,
couple recommendations.
yeah,
You want to listen to great opulent lead playing, go back and listen to those Sinatra albums in Capitol Studios with Conrad Gazzo, Shorty Chirac, Manny Klein, all those guys playing in the 50s, 40s and 50s. That's some really in your face lead playing where the sound is opulent and out front and beautiful, you know? Listen to Bud Herseth playing the Chicago Symphony. Listen to Robert Platt playing Berlin. Those are all great trumpet sounds in pretty diverse styles, and certainly Maurice Andre and Harkenberger. Oh my gosh, have you seen the Charliers online? Just beautiful. Everything's musical.
yeah.
The technique.
His Charlie A models have been like
Oh,
going to school every
yeah.
week. I mean, they're amazing.
Let's just get busy, right? But you see, what he doesn't do is he doesn't lose the beauty in the sound with technique. You listen to a lot of guys, and the technique starts moving, and the sound starts closing down. That's not what we're after in the way we think about playing. So you notice in the beginning of this morning, I wasn't going fast. I'm not worried about technique. I'm worried about getting a good sound, getting the air moving, and that technique will come.
Somebody asked a question, Bob, and I think this is a good one. When you're getting yourself ready for a performance, and how do you know that you're ready to play? Like as you're getting yourself prepared to play the trumpet as a warm up or as your preparation before the downbeat, how do you know you're ready to go?
Well, first of all, I never blow my brains out to the downbeat, whether that be a recording session or playing a show at night. When I had to work in Las Vegas, 2 shows a night, and I get up early in the morning, or what? Well, after playing at 2 a.m., that might be 8 o'clock in the morning or something, and I'll play a couple hours, and I'll make sure that everything is just. I bring it back because listen, playing a production show in Las Vegas, off in the morning, here was the first sound out of the pipe in the morning after playing for 2 hours, 2 shows, 4 hours the night before. Right? Now, I sent Rob a little thing about some ideas about you got to greet the horn where it meets you every morning. We're all physical. We're all human beings. It's blood, sweat, and tears. Maybe you've been sick. Maybe you had a great day, a good day versus a bad day. So you play that great day and you blow yourself. I mean, you're just so excited. You're blown and you go crazy, right? You overdo it. I know I'm seeing some guys online that were my students, Mark Knoblich. I know he never did this. Ulysses Cruz, I know they never did this. Hi, Ulysses. Hi, Mark. So you get you get anxious and you go, oh my gosh, it's working great. And the next morning you wake up and you got right. So That's what happens. You greet the horn where it meets you and you work through it. So you blow that pipe, get a cup of tea or coffee or whatever, and you keep
Good
working on it.
morning.
Go slow. You go very slow till it comes around. And you play some Clarks. You play some long tones. You play some flow stays. You find that, and you bring it back to where it needs to be. Okay? I mean, Greg Wing and I, when we used to work in Las Vegas, used to get together and practice. We used to laugh about it because it was like, are you kidding me? So what you do is you repair yourself all day or for that next morning so you can go up and beat the heck out of yourself that night again and figure it out. Pretty soon, when you figure it out, those things start going away. But there's quite a load on your system. So I would practice early in the morning, 2 or 3 hours. I'd put it away all day. I'd go to the gym, go out and run, whatever I did. Always I would exercise. Come back before the show, get there an hour, hour and a half before the show, have a salad or something to eat, in the cafeteria, go up in the dressing rooms, and I would start warming up. And I would always play in my warm-up with a couple Charliers or something like that. Because I always knew you had to keep the music going, and then I was ready for the show. And then between shows, I would usually just put it away, and after the show, I'd maybe do Maggio. Or sometimes between shows, Nick likes to tell a story where he came and subbed one time on Paul Anka. And my first show was, okay, the audience wouldn't have known, but I knew it wasn't as good as it should have been. So I went back in the practice room, and I did 45 minutes of tonguing and triple tonguing and a couple long line things, and came out on the second show and said, okay, you SOB, I'm running the show, not you. So that's kind of the trumpet world, right? I don't know if that answers it or not.
I think it does. And I think one of the things I remember as a younger player, I this and I would just say this to younger players because I've been there where you are, that there were times where I shied away from playing because I was trying to save it. And I've heard, I remember a conversation between some guys at the national trumpet competition a few years ago. I think there was the Jims were there and Carl were there, and they were talking about this dual mentality that guys can have, where one mentality is if you think about the number of notes you can play a day, that you've got a certain number of bullets in that gun. There's only a certain number of bullets, and then when you're out, you're out. And the idea of like with the tradition that we come in is as long as you're hearing a beautiful sound and taking a good breath, that there aren't a limited number of high C's you can play a day, right? It's always there. It's you have access to it as long as you come to the trumpet with the right mindset and the right breath. Bob, would you agree with that?
Exactly. And Mr. Adam had a really great quote. Playing trumpet is like the more you deposit in the bank, the more you have to withdraw. So
Yeah, that's really good. And so I think I think the idea of like sitting there before a big concert and playing like, 3 or 4 Charliers would make some people go like, "Oh my gosh, that's a lot of playing." And I used to think that too until I realized that a lot of times I needed to do that playing in order, like just like what you said, you have to invest that so that when you are ready to go, because it gets you in all those good musical cues get your physiology ready to play,
well, yeah,
and then you're ready to go.
right, let me leave you all with another thought is that you when you're practicing and blowing the routine, it should be loosening you up and warming you up. It shouldn't and getting you set up each day. It shouldn't be wearing you out. If it's wearing you out, you're doing something wrong. So when you're practicing by yourself, which I would encourage you to trade off with friends, but when you are practicing by yourself, make sure you rest as much as you play. You're dealing with physiology here. And rest as much as you play and take some time. All right, so any other questions? We better play a little bit more or we're going to just be
We'll
yakking.
we'll do some more playing, and then we can do some questions again at the end. How's that sound?
So, yeah, good. So, and the other thing that I sent, there's an older routine version of Schlossberg. I don't know if you have this handy, Rob, but those of you that know it, the Schlossberg sixes and sevens. It's Schlossberg number 24, I think we start on. I'm sorry, Rob, I'm throwing you
Do you
a
know? Do you know? In the hang on a second.
it's actually
I've
they're
downloaded
actually in the autumn.
all the
Hang on,
attachments you
Rob.
sent me.
They're in the autumn book, and it's on page. Yeah, it's page. I'm finding it here. I just do it from memory, so I never look at the book. Um,
I may not have. I don't have. I did not PDF all of
Oh, that's
Charlie's
okay.
book,
That's okay.
so I may not have it.
Um, well, let's see if we can. If you all know it, it's pretty easy. It's just starting.
If you start playing, I might
Starting
be
at
able to find it.
it's if you have it too, it's Schlossberg number 23. But
Oh, I have
yeah, what
Schlossberg.
we
Yep.
do is we put in the third on the way up that doesn't say it in Schlossberg, and we just play it as even as we can. One of the things I notice when I listen to trumpet players too, I can't hear all you, which is maybe one day I'll come back and we can do this live or something. But don't let up on the way down. The line goes from the first note to the last note. Trumpet players have a tremendous bad habit of putting a lot of energy to the higher note of the phrase and they let up. All right, so play it evenly as possible. I think these Schlossbergs, although they're simple, achieve that.
What? Hey, Bob, real quick. What number was it in
It's number
Schlossberg?
23, Rob.
Okay, got it. I got it.
But it's the third in the way up of each key. Yeah, we put the third in. Awesome. Thank you. I'm sorry I threw you a curve.
No, it's okay. Can you do that one more time for everybody?
Exactly. I don't remember this, but I can remember walking the lesson and Mr. Adam would do these, and it would just pin your eardrum. It was so intense. It wasn't loud, but the sound was the core. And so that's what we're after. And once again, I'll start that first note, and I'll slightly accelerate that first note or crescendo it. And once we start that, we don't let up all the way to the last note. I'm not playing loud, but we just don't let up. So again, our goal is, I'm not going fast, it's to play as evenly as possible from the first to the last note. Get the best sound you can and float that on the breath. This will really stretch you out. We have one more, we do several of these, but if we look at number 24, as it's written, it's just simply, and you notice we sustain some notes and things, that's just a habit of the way we used to do them. between the E and the G to make sure your air is flowing. So a lot of guys have trouble with that two-note slur, or it really is an issue of the air accelerating through the horn, not your lips. Okay? Why don't you give that a try? Good. Well, a little different twist on a couple things in Schlossberg. That you notice that the William Adam routine is based on Herbert L. Clark, but a lot of Schlossberg, and I sometimes think we could even do a little more flexibility, so I'd recommend the Colin book, too, to keep that even. And again, lots of pronunciation. And you can do your pronunciation lots of different ways. You can even Arbin Singleton. Try double tonguing those, okay? Try single tonguing those. I mean, just mix it up on how you do some of this stuff with the same concepts in mind, but having a little bit more freedom to apply the approach to playing different exercises, because you certainly will have to do that when you get into music. Okay?
Yeah, I think it's important for young people to know. I needed to do more of this when I was younger, and that's it's okay to explore things and try things. It's not like it's not a rigid where there's rigidity is where we apply our mind to the horn, but there's not rigidity in like what we do and how we do it, like what we play. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and Mr. Adam, Charlie asked me to write the foreword for the book that he compiled. We put together, and I did a little, helped him edit it a little bit, and Jerry and Larry and I and several other people, John Harbaugh, Greg, Carl, we all contributed different things, and but the thing that I came to was that I called it the three P's, and I sent that out. Rob will probably post it, but it's the psychology, the physiology, and the physics of the horn. You can't change the physics of the horn. You can't really change how your body works. So what's the most important thing we must concentrate on? How we think. And William Adam was pretty brilliant on how our mind has to be aligned with the reality of physiology and physics. So we can, like I said earlier, you can overblow your body, but you can't really overblow the trumpet. So that's what we talk about in terms of having your mind lined up in the sound. We didn't really talk a lot about, Bill Adam had a lot of transposition studies we did, and Getchell books 1 and 2. Those guys that have studied with Rob or me, or I know Phil May's there, all of us that study with Mr. Adam. Mr. Adam would often say, you know, the side benefit of doing the Getchell books and all the transpositions he would give us, and different books, not just Getchell, was you learn how to transpose. The real benefit he was trying to achieve was to separate your mind and your thinking from the names of notes and the mechanics of the trumpet. So your mind was purely in sound. And that's what we really must do. You know, jazz players do it all the time. They're completely on a different level. You know, great jazz players are playing what their mind is telling them in terms of notes. Great orchestra players or great classical players are completely on another plane playing what has to happen. I've learned that one skill probably served me better than you can't buy tennis shoes for your kids. You know, then your wife looks at you and goes, well, what happened? How come you didn't get the call? Well, golly, I didn't do enough Getchell transfers. No, you know what but I'm making a joke, but it's really important that you free your mind up from the mechanics of trumpet.
Yeah, that's great. I went ahead and I'll just tell everybody to check the chat. And Bob, all the things that you sent me over email, I have shared those things with everyone in the chat field. So if you want
Right.
to reference any of those are things that Bob has shared with us. And when we finish up here in a little bit, those things will go away. So if you want to take a minute to go through there and um, bring those into your computer. And if you need, you can send, if you're on a phone or something, you can feel free to email me and I can share them with you that way too.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to send you one more that I forgot. All the guys that have studied with me have heard this, but there was a really terrific article written in the, I'm going to try to open it here, written in the Instrumentalist, and, you know, of course they tell you don't copyright, you know, don't copy, don't say, you know, well, um, and it was John Schlossbach. I don't know. Do you know
Oh,
him?
John Schlabach. Yeah, he's the professor of trumpet at Ohio University.
Well, he wrote an article, and if I could have written something better, I would have. Let me just put it that way. And it's called On Connecting the Ear to Trumpet Playing. His premise is many young trumpet players believe when they know that they've made a mistake, or they're hearing what's in front of them and they know they made a mistake, that they hear, they're convinced they hear what it is. They don't really. What they're doing is judging what's coming out of the bell and trying to correct it a nanosecond too late. So it must be heard before you release the air into the horn. And it's just such a great article. Read it. He's got a couple little exercises in the back about singing numbers and making sure you're pitch aware all the time. You're aware of that stuff. But it's really quite it's really well written, and I give him a lot of credit. You know,
What's the name of that article one more time?
it's on connecting the ear and trumpet playing. I just sent it to you in an email.
Oh, great.
Yeah. All right. So you can post that. I hope he doesn't mind, but I think it's so well written that I shared it with my students over the years, and it's really what we're trying to achieve in every kind of music we're playing, right? When we
Yeah.
get hung up in the how-to, we lose track of the what-to, and we want to keep our mind in the sound we're trying to play, and that really is a matter of going slow and training your brain. You know, you get your ego involved and think you should be able to play something at a certain tempo because you understand what you see in front of you, but maybe your physiology won't react that quick and you're putting it all together. So I suggest you go really slow on things until you learn them, until they're calm in your mind. If you're practicing and at any time you're a bit rattled or nervous or a little bit on edge, then you're not practicing with a calm mind. So practice with a calm mind so when you get in the heat of battle, that'll be on autopilot. And even though there's a little bit of maybe butterflies in your stomach or anxiety of whatever happens, if you've prepared that way over years and months or practice every day that way, that when you get under a little bit of pressure, your system won't fall apart and neither will your brain. You'll be able to hang in there. So I think it's really important. All right. So any other questions at all? Or
Yeah, there was a question that someone had a little earlier that was, let me just read it for so in case I need to paraphrase. Okay, so when playing through these exercises that we've done today, do you advise younger players, and younger meaning like not necessarily by age, but just where they're at in their development, that you recommend them use vibrato? And that, so I mean, is there a way that you do or do not use vibrato when you're learning to play the trumpet and going through fundamentals?
well, you should be able to turn it on or turn it off. I mean, I use it a little bit naturally because I just part of my sound, but you should be able to turn it on and off because in certain settings you're not going to want it. And too much vibrato in a trumpet section when there's a chord being held can start messing with it. So you want to do a very little bit. And oftentimes when there is a sustained chord with something that's very beautiful, maybe the first part will put just a hair on and the rest of us are going to kind of stay static if you're playing an inner part. You don't want to overdo that, but you should be able to play straight or either way is appropriate depending on what you're playing in what setting. When you're playing a solo, do it what's appropriate. I mean, I think vibrato, if you notice in styles, if you're playing in a 30 style, like I've had to do some different things here where you're playing like in an old dance band style for a recording, and that or Dixieland or whatever, but that vibrato is much more appropriate and much faster. As you get further up into our century, the vibrato is slowed down a little bit, but it's still there. I mean, you listen to Arturo, I mean, not many people play better than Arturo, and when he wants to really turn it on, that vibrato's wide enough to park a VW in there. So, and he has a great sound. So it's appropriate to the style of music you're playing, but you should be able to turn it on and off, just, musically.
If I can add, Katie's the one that asked the question. If I can add to what Bob said to that, because the teachers that I studied with early on used a lot of vibrato when they modeled for me, and that was really, there was a lot of musical benefits for that. Like that served me quite well as an expressive quality. But one of the things I had to learn how to do was, as Bob was saying, to like, you have to learn how to turn it off, means that you have to hear the music you're trying to play without it. So it's not like turning it off physically, it's turning it off mentally. So if you're playing the promenade to pictures at an exhibition and the conductor asks you to go back and play that again in the audition, hey, can you play that again, but you do it without vibrato? You as the trumpet player have to turn it off here, not
Yeah.
focus on turning it off here. You have to hear this melody without the vibrato. And that
And that,
takes a little bit of practice.
and that goes for everything you're doing. It always is a thought, not a physical activity. The thought, no, you want to be able to straight, even, and that's the way you hear it, not the way you're going to physically change something to make it happen. It's exactly right, whatever that style is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob, we got another question, and this is a good one. This is sort of related. I think it's related to what we were talking about, like getting into the upper register at mezzo forte or mezzo piano. But this person's question is, when you're doing lip flexibilities, like what we just got done, and you kind of we put the two note slur in there, and we're able to kind of get it moving a little quicker. Okay. So when you do that, this person says they have a hard time getting that to move quicker without just playing with more volume or force. Like they have to get it by playing louder and blowing harder. Do you have any ways of suggesting a player learn how to have that flexibility, moving at the top of the staff slurs
Yeah.
without relying on volume to get it to happen?
So if you, I don't know if I was talking to Phil about this or Carl or somebody. Phil, I don't know. Um, you, if you know the St. Jacom's bugle calls that you work on, you know, you don't need to find them, Rob. That's okay.
Okay.
Take that same pattern. I'm just using an example and try that on slurs, but don't go fast. Only go as fast on the quarter notes as you can play the 16th. And if it's hard that fast, then slow it down. Set a metronome and play through it. But it's again, it's an issue of accelerating the breath. It's not an issue of playing loud. I mean, maybe I was playing loud there. So your breath. Allow it to think that, oh, this lip, oh, that must mean something with the lips. It really is. There may be motion there. We don't think about that. We think about the sound we're trying to play. We make sure we maintain that air and slightly accelerate that air till that begins to settle down. Again, this is not something that you can intellectually understand without practicing it diligently every day on every partial. All right? And then you take that slightly and then you go up in the upper register. The other thing that will help is the colon flexibilities because they get you around the horn. And again, Rob said this, and it's absolutely right. You don't want the opulence or the core of the sound to change anywhere you're playing on the horn. Right? All of that sound stays even up and down. Every note has a bullseye, and that's you're floating that, thinking of the sound, you're floating that through with the breath. I don't know if that helps or not, but that's the way I try to teach those things.
Yeah, it can be hard because I went through in my process, and some of you here might have had this too, that where you had braces for a period of time in your younger years of playing. I had braces all the way through high school, and that naturally made flexibilities and slurring a little bit of a challenge. And then when I had the braces off, the problem was I had to kind of trust the trumpet a different way because I kept hearing myself struggle with those things, and you kind of have to be able to get out of your own way trying to make it happen here, and you got to, I was just telling a student the other day that we have to, we hear things like we have to trust the breath or trust the wind, and there is a letting go that has to happen, of the physical things when you're talking about slurring.
Yeah, and there's certainly a lot of patience involved too.
Yep.
Making sure you stay after it every day to get these things to work, and don't get anxious about it. Believe it's going to happen and stay after it.
Bob, you want to play some songs or something?
Uh, yeah, I don't. What do you want us to do?
I don't know what you sent the Russian tunes. We could blow a Russian tune or two.
Yeah, we can do it in short phrases.
Yeah, let's do that.
Let's see here. Yeah.
You could just call one out if you want to do number one. We can do number one,
Yeah,
or
that's fine. Yeah, we'll do it just little phrases. The Blasovich here. Let me see if I've got it. Well, that's okay. much. Yeah, Rob. So if any of you guys are anywhere near Austin P, you should be studying with that guy. Anybody around Bill Bergen, you should be with him. And Phil May there in Bloomington, Indiana. You can't go wrong.
And I'll say that just to help with the geography, Bill's in Des Moines, Iowa area, and
Right.
he's got I know he's the guy to go study with if you're in that part of the country.
Yeah.
And for young folks, let me tell you, I mean, I was very fortunate to study with a student of Bill Adam as a high school kid. Very, very fortunate. It really set my head in the right place at a time and the age of my life where I so many kids end up with their brains in the trumpet gutter of what
It's a big,
mouthpiece do I
it's
use
a
for
big
this? And
gutter. Yeah.
those years are very. They can either be a complete waste or they can be something that really sets your thinking up for success. And
Yeah.
very fortunate for
Well,
that.
and any of you guys that are watching this or would like to contact me and or ask me a question on email, I'm always happy to answer. Or on Zoom or whatever. That's
Yeah,
fine.
and Bob, do you do any teaching on Zoom in case anybody wanted to reach out
Yeah,
to
I
you
got
for a
guys
lesson?
all over. I got a guy in Hong Kong and another guy in Paris. I got guys all over the place now, and I'm teaching at Azusa Pacific University. I got like about 9 or 10 students, and then yeah, my wife, I was supposed to retire, but I'm busy playing, and of course, there's no playing out here right now, so that's all kind of shut down. But it'll come back, and I get to do what I want to do, and mostly I get to go fly fishing when I want to go. So that's the good news.
And it's fishingtrumpet.com, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, there, I put it in the chat.
It's
So,
gonna
oops,
get
I sent it
it's
to
gonna
just one
get
person.
changed. I need to edit it a little bit here to put more trumpet specific stuff on there
Well,
because
at least your contact information is on there in case
yeah,
people want
and
to
there's
reach
some
out
nice
to you.
cues and as proud as I am of anything I've been able to and lucky enough to do, I'm even more on there. That I think would make Mr. Adams smile, and I think that's what we're here for, to help all of you achieve your goals. So
Good.
I hope to see all you guys at the Adam Camp. Rob's hosting it next summer. It's been all over the country. I hosted it once. Carl Sievers hosted it a couple times. So it's going to be at Austin P and in Clarksville.
Clarksville.
Yeah,
You take the
right.
last train and then you somehow end
Clark.
up here. That's what I've heard.
Last train to Clarksville.
Yeah, you
Clarksville.
just
So
whatever the
anyway,
last train
we'll
is,
be
you
there
get on
next
that
summer.
one and then you end up here.
Well,
At the
we see all you
same.
guys. I will be there.
Or maybe you
So
end up in Clarksville, Indiana. I don't know. Maybe I
oh
don't know.
yeah.
There's a lot of Clarksvilles you could end up in, but
My wife has a rule. She said they should only allow one name for one city in every country instead of all these. Yeah.
yeah.
All right, you guys.
Okay,
We'll
great.
see you.
Well, thank you,
Thank you.
and listen, yeah. So thanks, a big thanks to Bob, and thanks for everybody for showing up.
Absolutely.
If you ever, if it works for your time zone, you can use this same Zoom link and join us on Tuesday and Thursday mornings at 8 a.m. Central Time. So at 8 Central Time, which is a little earlier, just so we get going for where we live, we get going a little earlier at 8 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And you can use the same link that you used today. It's the same Zoom ID and all that business. So if you want to hop on Tuesday, Thursdays, you're welcome to join us then as well. So, but big thanks, Bob. And everybody, hope you found that it was
Okay, you
beneficial
guys.
for
Thank
you.
you.
And we'll see you guys around, okay? Thank you.
Yeah. And like I said, don't hesitate to call me or contact me if you need some help with something. I'd be happy to help you. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Bob. Have a good day.
See you guys. Thank you.